Well, not long ago, I remember feminists were outraged that there were dolls, Barbie dolls you could buy, where if you pulled the string, they would say certain messages. One of those messages was, math is hard. Just a lighthearted joke, but oh my God, what an offense to the equality of men and women. And as a dad who has girls myself, I understand. You don't want to prejudge. You don't want to be sexist. Well, where are those voices today? Joining us now via Skype from New York is our friend Pamela Geller, the president of American Freedom Defense Initiative and the editor of the Geller Report. Pamela, the feminists who were outraged that a doll might say math is hard because that's sexist, where are those feminists today with a new line of halal hijab Barbies, hijab-wearing Barbies and other Sharia-compliant toys? Where are the feminists today?
Well, I'm sure they're hiding under their desks where they can be found when called for comment on, let's say, honor killings. This is the world's first Muslim toy store, Muslim toys only. One of their leading products is the Hijab Barbie in a hijab. I, of course, find that ironic because the inventor of Barbie was Jewish. Ruth Handler was Jewish. She named it after her daughter Barbie. And so does the Muslim world know that their little girls are kissing and loving a little Jewish dolly? I don't know, but I love that part of it. That's that little side topic. There are Quran cards, there are colorful prayer mats, and the owner of the store says she is doing this in order to confront extremism. I don't know how one even puts these two together. First of all, it's not extremism, because extreme is a measure. Is pursuit of good or justice or liberty in the extreme a bad thing? The idea that she's scrubbing jihad, I think points to maybe a different agenda. And how would a Muslim-only toy store, how would that possibly battle, quote-unquote, violent extremism? And again, here we go with these words, as opposed to moderate violence, that's okay. It's against integration. It is in support of Islamic misogyny, the oppression of women, the garment that's the oppression of women. I mean, everything that this woman, the owner, says that she's doing it for, it serves the opposite purpose.
Yeah. You know what my crazy friend Gavin McInnes brought to my attention, that the latest edition of Playboy magazine, I didn't know it even existed anymore, has a picture of a fully dressed woman wearing a hijab. So the magazine that used to be about nude women is now having a hijab-covered woman, and this is the leading edge. This is pop culture. This is cool. This is sexy now. Putting aside Playboy, I guess my point is, the keeping women wrapped up, it's not just avoiding a promiscuity or a lasciviousness that one might associate with pornography. I'm talking about a woman's right simply to walk down the street with her head uncovered. But that now is the normal. And what gets me, Pamela, is that there's a pressure for non-Muslim women and girls to wear a hijab, because the hijab is like, I don't know, garlic to a vampire. It's a signal, don't sexually assault me, sexually assault the infidel next to me who's not wearing a hijab. And this isn't my own theory. This is what Yusuf Qaradawi, the spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, says. He says the purpose of the hijab is to differentiate and to shroud women, so to telegraph to would-be rapists, don't go after me. Oh,
absolutely. Look, you're right when you say that it's being imposed on the Western world. I don't know about Canada, but I can tell you in the U.S., across universities and public schools, they have Hijab Day, where girls are encouraged to come in wearing the hijab. We don't see that at, Jewish Day, where boys are encouraged to come in wearing a kippah, or, extending it to Hindu or Christianity and so on and so forth. And I will tell you that I do call the garments, the Islamic garments, the hijab, the niqab, the burqa, the chador, these are anti-women garments, because when they are fully garbed, it is to shroud, to cover, to completely cover the female form, as if it's something to be ashamed of, as if it's something to be, quote unquote, modest about. And I think that there is nothing more beautiful in God's creation than the female form. And I find it deeply offensive. And if you choose to wear it, that's your prerogative, but to impose it on our children. And as I said, this is happening in schools across the country where girls are encouraged to wear Islamic garb. I find that deeply offensive and misogynist, and it's imposing the Sharia on Western societies.
Yeah, and it's not just anti-women, it's anti-women with a theocratic Sharia basis behind it. It's the law, or it's the fatwa. It would be more like if the local priests from the Catholic Church came and said, we're going to have chastity belt day. And I know that's so absurd, it would never happen. Such a thing as, medieval, and they don't even exist these days, but that's what it would be like. Hey guys, just for fun, try on this medieval chastity belt. Yeah, come on, it's fun. Yeah, it's cool. And if there was that's such an absurd comparison, I know, because that is not what Catholic churches do, priests do these days. But that's the comparison, which is, hey, just for fun, to be cool, have this religiously inspired anti-female garment to be strapped on you. I think that a burqa or a chador is really a chastity bag. It's a one-woman, the niqab especially offensive. It's like a chastity belt for the face. Are any U.S. secular groups like the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, who go to court to strip the Ten Commandments off of courthouses, is the ACLU, to your knowledge, anywhere in America, stopping the Muslim imposition of hijabs in public schools or other public places that the ACLU has so successfully driven Christian and Jewish Bibles out of?
No, not at all. And that's a reflection of the leftist Islamic alliance. These curriculums that we see in the public schools, the teaching of the Shahada, nowhere do we see teaching of the Lord's Prayer. Nowhere do we see the teaching of the Shema. Nowhere do we see any course curriculums that come near the teaching of the 5 pillars of Islam, that Muhammad was the true prophet of God, and so on and so forth. I mean, children are being forced to memorize the Shahada, which, by the way, if you say it 3 times, you're a Muslim. It's outrageous. And again, this is this insidious march via the textbooks, via the Board of Ed, via even on a local level, the student, the parent teacher and the school councils. That's why parents need to get involved. They're shocked when their children come home with this homework. And of course, if they open their mouths, they're immediately called a racist and an Islamophobe. Well, let me say this. Islam is not a race, and Islamophobia is just a dysphonism for Sharia. It is a way of imposing the Sharia by using this word that makes you into an ugly person for opposing creed apartheid, gender apartheid, Islamic Jew hatred, and so on and so forth. And we're seeing this across the West. It's not just in America. This is in Europe. Actually, Europe is much further gone. And, people are now starting to take matters into their own hands in Europe, which is a pity. But they're being forced. Look, when you have a court, for example, in Europe that overturns the conviction of a rapist, a Muslim migrant rapist, who anally raped a 10-year-old boy and said he didn't know, the boy didn't want it, and the Austrian Supreme Court says, oh, well, there was no way to know the little boy didn't want it, so they overturned the conviction. And we're seeing this repeatedly, then people are going to be forced to take matters into their own hands, which is why the work that I do and that you do is so critical, that we don't get to that point. But I don't see any pushback at all. I mean, this is what you see is anyone that comes out against it, like Donald Trump, is demonized, marginalized. I mean, there's a war on Donald Trump, and it is extraordinary. It's clearly unmasked, or unmasked, as it were, the media, the mainstream media. And I'll tell you something. I don't believe any of the polls. I'm telling you that, Ezra. When I see these pictures of these huge, massive rallies for Trump, and she can barely get a puny gathering together, something is very smelly. Something is rotten in America.
Well, I'm puzzled by that too, because I see the intensity of Trump supporters, and I know how visceral it is. And I heard a recording the other day, and I want to verify it. It sounded like Michael Moore, it was purported to be Michael Moore, who said that what he saw in Donald Trump was someone who was willing to take on trade agreements that export jobs. And he said that, people who are dispossessed, people who are marginalized, people who've lost their jobs, he says what they have is one last FU to authority, to the establishment, to the elites through their vote. It almost sounded to me like Michael Moore was going to vote for Donald Trump. I want to check that out because it was almost too much for me to believe. But putting aside Michael Moore himself, I sense that for so many Americans who are upset about all the establishment, it reminds me of the Brexit vote. All the fancy people were on one side and the regular people on the other. Here's my question for you, and I know we've shifted gears here a bit from the Hijab Barbie store, but I think that 20-30% of Americans have had the scales fall from their eyes. They see in Donald Trump an imperfect man, but the only man who's willing to talk about borders and security and Islam, and they're willing to forgive all of his boisterousness and his bull in the china shop style, because that's precisely the style they want to aim at the establishment. So actually, the fact that he's rough is a plus. But what I'm worried about, Pamela, is that the number of people who are sort of woke, to use a phrase of the left, is, let's say, 30-40%. And the number of die-hard Democrat entitlement union, the hardcore base of the Democrats is, let's say, 40%. And then the folks in the middle, they're not paying attention enough. So they're not going to go to the rallies. They're going to get their news passively from ABC, CBS, NBC, from the New York Times. And that although Trump's base is extremely motivated and very worried, that mushy middle folks, the waters are being so muddied by the mainstream media, I'm worried that Hillary Clinton is going to sort of slouch across the finish line like a few points ahead of Trump. What do you say to all that?
I say that, like anything else, is a possibility. I don't see it. I don't believe it. You cited Brexit. I certainly hold that up. Everybody said, everybody from the media to the polls to the politicians. Farage, the leader of the movement, conceded not once, not twice, but 3 times that night. I don't trust anybody. I do believe that the silent majority is larger than anyone knows. I think even yesterday with the news that came out that Obamacare, that the premiums are going to double, triple, and quadruple in some states. This is hitting people where they live. Yeah. And if they're lazy intellectually, like someone like Michael Moore, because I did see that video also, he's a sloth in his thinking and in his appetite. And now that he has a real opportunity to win Trump, you see him now, meeting Michael Moore saying the most, vile things about Trump. Who could take anyone like that seriously? But to your point, I think that there is a silent majority, and I think people are going to be very surprised. People have to get out. They have to get out the vote. If you care about freedom, if you care about the future, if you care about your children, pick somebody up and take them. And take a picture. Take a picture and hashtag it of your vote, because as you know, we're seeing an extraordinary amount of voter fraud and rigging, where people are pushing in the early voting. They're pushing Trump and Hillary and Clinton and Kaine are coming up, and we've seen this now in Maryland, in Texas, in Illinois, and of course there are those 13 states with George Soros machines. How did that happen? Yeah. There's a lot of skullduggery and malfeasance going on, no question about it. I do think it would need to be on an enormous scale, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Everybody should say their prayers, and everybody should do their part, because you may not live in America, but the fact is, the way America goes, the world is going to go, and you won't like what comes after America.
Yeah. There you have it. Pamela Geller of the Geller Report, fighting hard for all of us. Stay in touch, my friend. These are dangerous days we're in, and I hope that you're right. I fear you're not. Time will tell. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Ezra.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.